Welcome to IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. I'm Ritwika Gupta. Tonight we'll be putting a spotlight on India's healthcare industry, the impact of technology and what needs to be done to accelerate growth for MSMEs in India's healthcare sector. In the first segment, I'll be in conversation with Saurav Kasera, co-founder Clirnet. In the second segment, we'll be deep diving into India's chocolate market and the big trends in a conversation with L Nitin Chordia, co-founder and chief tasting officer, Kocoatrait Sustainable Chocolates. I'm now joined by Saurav, who's the co-founder at Clirnet. Thank you for being with us, Saurav.
Thank you, Ritwika. Thank you so much for the invite. It is a pleasure to be part of the show.
So to kick this off, give us an overview of the healthcare industry in India, especially in terms of the challenges faced by doctors today.
See, that's a very, very interesting question, Ritwika. And I think the challenges have evolved over time. But, just to give you, like a frame of challenges, just think about, the life journey of a doctor, right? So today, if you see, it's pretty much, until the age of 35, a doctor needs to study to become a doctor, right, in super specialized way.
Sure.
So one of the areas, the challenges that start with, I think the rigor that they need to put in the first 10 years, 15 years of their life, and, the very heavy power duty that needs to be done. That is something, in a country like India, it is more intense, right? So if you look at the resident doctors, right, they often complain, about a very, very long hours, and that has been in the press for a long time too. Second is once, you become a doctor, there are a couple of things which you need to do continuously. So with the kind of diseases that are, kind of engulfing our society today, you need to be very updated. There is a stats, that to get updated every day, you need to read 17 articles, which will take at least 5 to 6 hours. Now, on average, a doctor in India sees around 50 to 60 patients, right? Because the doctor-patient ratio itself is very high. It's 1:2000, almost 3 times, what is mandated by WHO. So that's one challenge, which they face every day as to how they would keep themselves updated all the time.
Sure.
Then, once they start treating patients, patient non-adherence has been a very, very big problem in our society because of lack of education, I would say, and also, the lack of affordability.
So what was the initial idea behind Clirnet?
One of the things, that in healthcare, we realized pretty fast is, it's very hard to get to 1.3 billion people, but it is maybe easier to get to 800,000 or 1 million doctors, right? Because they are the people who are treating. And I think that's where the focus came, can we do something, or can we help doctors to treat their patients better? And the first idea that came up, can we make them talk to each other, right? And the entire concept was that, any patient, right? And I'll give you an example. If a patient goes to a doctor in Itanagar, through his doctor, the patient should have access to the collective wisdom of all the doctors, right? Which means that this entire knowledge, right, among doctors had to be somehow, bought on one platform. And that is how Clirnet started. And the second was, and that's a vision that we are kind of working on now, as to how we can leverage the knowledge of doctors to do patient education. And that's what, we have just launched a platform called DocTube 6 months ago, where doctors are straight educating patients on healthcare. So we have already put around 20,000 videos. It's a pure video platform where doctors speak, straight to patients in vernacular languages. So I think knowledge is the key, and knowledge leads to wisdom. And I think our plan was, can we make a platform which captures both this area?
Saurav, your company is fairly new and young, yet it has experienced significant growth in the past 2 years. Can you share some key factors that have contributed to this?
I think a bunch of factors have come together, Ritwika. So, first is we have now, our enrollment base has now gone close to 400,000 doctors, which is pretty much 40% of India's doctors, right? So there's a huge community effect that has now kicked in where doctors are talking to each other. So I think that was something which was happening, but now it has started happening in a more rapid scale.
Wonderful.
Second is, the technology adoption. Third is the content bank that we have now built over the past 7 years. It is really working very, very well. And then, putting them to use.
So Saurav, you also launched India's first AI-powered doctor's assistant, IDA, if that's how you pronounce it. This was launched last year. Tell me, what kind of impact has it had on the healthcare landscape and even as far as medical education is concerned?
Today, generative AI is actually helping you to convert that wisdom into decision making, and that's what we have done in ADA. So, and I think I mentioned in the first part, right, with the kind of disease variety or the pattern that we are seeing across, right, it is not difficult, it is impossible for any human being to pretty much keep everything in their mind, right? And this is more acute for doctors who are just starting that practice, right? So if you look at a doctor after 30 years of experience, he still has, his brain still covers a lot of, I would say, a variety of cases that he has seen. But that's not the case with a young physician. So essentially what we thought was, can we create, something where this wisdom that we have captured be helping decision making.
Okay.
So we launched ADA, which is AI-powered doctor's assistant. It is not meant to replace doctors at all. It is meant to strengthen their hands. And we believe that very, very strongly that AI should be, used responsibly.
Just to wrap up, the MSME ministry has identified health as one of the target sectors that can help India become a global leader. What do you think needs to be done to empower and accelerate growth for MSMEs in India's healthcare industry?
I think there are maybe 4 or 5 areas that we need to really focus on, very, very strongly. Funding is always a problem in healthcare, right? Because it's not a very, very fancy area for people because, in healthcare, you always need to put social impact before profit or before EBITDA, right? We believe it very strongly, and that's how we have run. So, if the government can make access, low cost funding, I think that would be very, very, I would say that would be helpful to the industry. Second is, we need to really create a environment of innovation. Right? So how can we help MSME to do more research projects, in terms of funding, in terms of creating partnerships with the bigger institutions, in India? I think that is very, very important too. Third reason I would say is technology adoption, right? So how can, government help in creating more digital healthcare infrastructure across, right? Which will help MSME to leverage, that entire area to grow.
So Saurav, you've had a successful pre-Series A funding round raising $1 million. And I also hear you plan to expand to South Asia, Africa and the Middle East. So tell me, what's the road ahead for Clirnet? What specific areas do you plan to focus on?
I think, Ritwika, we are very, very clear in how we are going to approach, the next, I would say 2 to 3 years. I think first is the platform that we have built for doctors. Will strengthen it by putting more content. And now we have built a very, very scalable, you can call it UGC or, community generated content model, which is there, which is working very, very well. So that's one area. Second is, we just launched our international version 2 months ago. And I think the main motivation was, so we did a lot of study with, international institutions. And what we saw was that the content that had been generated on the Clirnet platform is highly relevant to a lot of other countries which are there.
Okay.
And there's a lot of content, but the question is, how do you create that relevancy and how do you direct it to the right people? So I think we are very, very excited about that. Healthcare is becoming very global post-COVID. That's a very, very critical phenomenon. And I think that there's a huge potential, for India to actually take a leadership. And we believe very, very strongly in this, right? So we are trying to form a community, where India basically takes a head position in bringing all the, I would say, the emerging countries together to better healthcare outcomes. So our plan is, we are going to hit maybe 100,000 videos in the next year and a half. And pretty much, anything that you want to know in a very localized way in healthcare in India, anyone should be able to get this from DocTube. So we have a bunch of stuff, Ritwika, and we are very, very excited to be part of this, journey India is going through in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, thank you for joining us, Saurav. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you so much, Ritwika, for giving us the opportunity to present the Clirnet story. Thank you.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back to IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. Now, all you chocolate lovers, this segment is meant for you. We are now going to talk about India's chocolate market. My colleague Priyanka Das makes her debut on Leaders of Tomorrow, and she'll be breaking down for us the trends to look forward in the industry in a conversation with Kocoatrait. Listen in.
Welcome to the show, Nitin. So glad you could join us.
Thanks a lot, Priyanka. Thanks for having me over.
Nitin, as India's first chocolatier, tell us, do you truly have the most interesting job? And how did you really get started as an entrepreneur with Kocoatrait?
Being India's first chocolate taster, kind of gives us an edge. And of course, it's a very interesting job. We get occupied with great chocolates around us all the time, even if you don't want it anymore. But the idea is that any job, right, whether it's chocolate tasting or even whiskey, wine, or tea or coffee tasting, can get mundane at a point. So we get kind of, we get ideas to keep ourselves occupied. And one must remember that we have not just good chocolates to taste, but even some really bad chocolates to taste. But how I got into Kocoatrait was very coincidental, because sustainability was being spoken about in about 2017-18, but not much really happened during those years, But in 2019, we visited a show in Amsterdam, and that's when people asked us, can we ever make sustainable chocolates? Because at the core, cacao as a crop is not very sustainable. So we said, listen, I don't think we can change much from an agricultural standpoint. And of course, scientists are doing their best when it comes to improving genetic varieties of cacao that exist, which could probably use lower resources at some point of time and make the farming more sustainable, more greener, or whatever they want to do. But at our end, what is under our control is the chocolate manufacturing process, and importantly, the packaging process. We decided that we want to come up with this chocolate brand, and we decided that we need to set the best foot forward, right? So we decided that we will become an entrepreneur in this space, but not confined to just chocolate as a product, but also look at things around it. And that journey, I think, has been phenomenal. I've been a management consultant in the past, and moving from that to become an entrepreneur has been a very rewarding journey. As they say, it's a life of learning every minute as an entrepreneur, and I think that hasn't changed at all for me. It remains the same, like it does for every other entrepreneur, in the world.
Now tell me, what's your take on India's chocolate making industry and the trends that you foresee taking shape?
The way I see the Indian market moving is there are two things that you can possibly go by. One is the increase in the specialty coffee or tea or wine or whiskey segment, right? So you see the growth there, and then you imagine the same thing happening with cacao and chocolate, because they follow each other quite closely around the world. But the other thing, which is probably very Indian-centric or relevant to India, is that, you look at the traditional Indian sweets, And the way sales of that is alarmingly reducing, I think what is being compensated for that lack of sale, in the market is chocolates as a category. So we're looking at chocolate kind of equalizing the reduction in sales for Indian sweets or of Indian sweets. And chocolate seems to be the category that has been a category of choice for people, wanting to gift. So I see the market kind of evolving in a way that there'll be many small chocolate makers, small to medium, and a few national players, much like the Indian traditional sweet industry, where there are maybe 5 or 10 national players, but majority of them are regional, small to medium kind of players.
Right.
It's almost impossible for an Indian sweet maker to manage without having chocolates in their portfolio going forward. And once with all of that competition come in, there'll be pure play chocolate makers, chocolatiers, as well as Indian sweet makers, who'll form the majority of the supply. And I think consumers are in for, a treat going forward. So it's going to be more chocolatey going forward.
So Nitin, you spoke about how sustainability forms such an important core of your business. So could you elaborate on the steps taken by you and the brand to make it sustainable and work towards becoming net zero?
From a sustainability perspective, I think it's not just chocolates, it's every food category or packaged food product that needs to be looked at. And we just focused on chocolate because I thought there was a clear gap between the demand and supply there. So that's why we chose chocolates. But if you look at the steps we've taken, clearly there are quite a lot, right? So there are many steps that we've taken, but what we try to do is we start at the farm,
Sure.
where we do our bit to ensure that we pay a higher price to the customer. And that actually circles back to sustainability, because a lot of things that we can do to be more sustainable, to be more green,
Sure.
eventually boils down to you paying a bit more to the farmer so that he can help you achieve that goal. So we start at the farm. We do several things to ensure that, first of all, we don't buy from overseas. I mean, that itself is the first step we take towards being more sustainable. We get our raw materials from, as close to 300 to 400 kilometers from our manufacturing unit. And then when it comes to our, processing unit, we do a lot to minimize the amount of energy that our equipments take. And we are constantly at it. We're constantly looking at the amount of electricity we consume, because we believe that, we anyways have to offset that amount of carbon that we generate by consuming the electricity.
Right.
So may as well consume lesser so that you have to offset lesser. That's typically what we aim to achieve every single day at our manufacturing unit. And apart from that, we have a concept where we would, we're guided by the fact that we don't want to cut a single tree to run our operation. So once you have that clear in your mind, everything that you do, whether it is the A4 paper that you use in your printer, or clearly the wrapper that we use for packaging our chocolate, is completely sustainable. And in fact, it is upcycled so that we use lesser wood and, of course, cut lesser trees in the process of creating our packaging material. Moreover, the cocoa husk that we generate while roasting our cocoa beans is further used in our packaging. So zero waste operation is again something that guides us as a principle.
Now, in recent years, domestic chocolate companies like yours have gained international recognition and accolades. So what would you say has led to this global attention?
The flavors that we all know, in our daily lives, the flavors that we recognize, the flavors that we come across, the flavors that we appreciate, again, may change from, the north of the country to the south and east and west, but all of these plethora of flavors kind of are known to us.
Absolutely.
So whether it's spices, whether it's flowers, whether it's fruits, we have a breadth of, flavors that we deal with on quite a regular basis. That I think is kind of our foundation when it comes to chocolate. And when I say our, I mean as a country. So producers or chocolate makers can actually put their best foot forward and use the right flavor ingredients to make a difference. I think that is catching the world's attention, because chocolate otherwise can get very monotonous, right? There's milk, there's dark, there's white, you can add some nuts. What more can you do? Especially from a Western world perspective, there's a little less flexibility from a flavor point of view.
Right.
The world attention is being, focused on India is because the kind of flavors we can bring to the table, our own understanding and how we can merge them with chocolate so effortlessly, I would say.
Nitin, as you know, our show is focused on SMEs and MSMEs. Could you shed some light on the initiative Cocoshala and how it aims to help budding entrepreneurs who want to make their foray into the chocolate making business?
It is an incubation unit like none another, to be honest, where we work on one end with the farmers who also are our incubators in many ways, and also with chocolate entrepreneurs, mostly small and medium scale entrepreneurs who have this fire to make a difference. So we work with people who have the energy, who have the motivation, the enthusiasm, to make a difference. And of course, they've chosen cacao and chocolate, and that's why they've come to us. But we have an advantage of working with people who have a lot of energy that in turn drives us. But what we do really at Cocoshala is that we work with the raw material on one side up until the final chocolate bar, which means across the supply and the value chain. And we try to do our bit to innovate, not just around sustainability, but also building an ecosystem, creating farmers or encouraging farmers to produce better quality cacao on one hand, and also helping an entrepreneur, literally hand-holding them from the day one, from our onboarding program, which is a 3-day program, up until they actually set up their factory and launch their chocolate bar.
Right.
So people can look at us as, a one-stop shop, and in the true sense, a one-stop shop for anything they need in chocolate or they would ever need in chocolate. As an incubation unit, we really feel proud that we have been able to achieve our dream.
Right.
And in short, which is ensuring that India becomes, the capital for bean-to-bar chocolate makers of the world.
And finally, as we come to the end of this conversation today, tell us, Nitin, what's your vision for Kocoatrait?
We don't just want to be net zero or carbon negative or positive, whichever way you look at it. We want to be oxygen positive. That's really what our core business focus is going forward. So when you buy a bar of chocolate from us, forget being carbon negative, positive, all of that is what anyways all of us will be doing. But when you buy a Kocoatrait chocolate bar, you actually infuse oxygen in the air, or you help us infuse oxygen in the air. That's really what our vision and goal is. And we've very simply defined it. We want to be oxygen positive.
Thank you so much, Nitin, for your insights and in helping us understand the very niche world of chocolate making and more. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Priyanka. Thanks for the opportunity.
With that, it's a wrap on this episode of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. We hope you enjoyed the conversations. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.